Okay, and welcome back to the interview portion of this episode of Shockwaves. We were very, very excited by our special guest here because pretty sure, I think all of us unanimously went to see the Evil Dead remake.
I think we all saw it together.
We
right,
did.
for that.
In North Hollywood, I think.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it was...
Oh, that was opening night.
That was opening
Okay.
night.
So just so you know, we saw it on a press junket, on a whatever, Screamfest or whatever, and then we paid to see it opening night.
Right.
So there you go.
Because, interesting story,
you were pregnant.
I was due with my first child on the day that they did the press screening for Evil Dead. And as I walked in, the publicist looked at me and goes, I really hope you go into labor
we were
during the
hoping for
movie.
it. We were-
And I was kind of bummed
Well,
I didn't.
let's just say who the director is.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome, Fede Alvarez, to the show.
Hey, how you
Finally,
doing?
thank you so much.
Thanks for coming in, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for
and-
having me. I never done one of those.
Oh, okay.
This is his first. Yeah, this is his
That's
first
pretty cool.
podcast.
We'll be gentle.
Ever.
Don't worry.
Yeah, please be.
So obviously, you have a new movie coming out August 26th. Don't Breathe. We're all really excited about it. We're going to talk about it in a little bit. But for us, we come from the VHS generation. So for us, we discovered a lot of our love of movies and horror growing up and going to the video store. I don't really know much about your background. Where did you grow up originally?
I was born in Uruguay in Latin America, and actually moved to Belgium when I was like very young. When I was 3 years old. My father was studying over there, lived there for like 5 years, and then went back to Uruguay, and that's where I lived until pretty much the moment that that night you were talking about when you went to see Evil Dead. I was kind of about that week. I was literally moving to Los Angeles.
I remember a vague story. I interviewed you on the junket for Evil Dead, and you would tell people about how you saw the original Evil Dead movie with, I think, one of your friends. How did you find movies as a kid? I mean, because coming from a different
Just like you
country-
did, guys. I mean, it's really. I'm amazed sometimes how the perspective here, and in a great way. It's just curious how usually sometimes people in the States are not aware of how common it was for the rest of the world of doing the same thing you guys were doing back in the 80s, just going to the video store and renting those movies, which talk greatly about the power of Hollywood and how far it goes. Like sometimes you think, well, it's just this thing that Americans, we make movies here in the States and it's just for that audience. And then sometimes people are broad, because I get questions about movies that people think that they maybe never reach Uruguay, like it's like they jump on a train
Were
and
there
they.
were there censorship?
Well, there is.
rules or anything
Every
like that,
country
or?
has a different one, I guess. But look, it was the same movies. It was the same video store. I will go there, choose movies, mostly based on what was in the back of, in the cover. I was remember the other day, a friend of mine, we've just been doing this for such a long time, just looking for strange movies. And I was trying to remember the one with the elevator. And of course, I'm not talking about Devil. I'm talking about the
lift.
elevator.
The lift?
It was like in Spanish, probably was called the
Yeah.
elevator, and probably was the lift. But it had like a hand coming out of an elevator, and the door was closed. But inside, it had a guy sleeping with just screwing some woman against the wall in the elevator. It had probably nothing to do with the plot. But usually you were looking for the forbidden, right? Like you were looking for that thing that was going to be strange, that your parents would definitely not approve that you were watching that film. And usually I'm sure the distributors were doing those things, like just giving you something in the back that was just a brief description of what the movie was, but usually a boob or like something very bizarre, or the best makeup effect in the movie, some face exploding or whatever it was that. And I was always fascinated by that, and still are. Like how do you manage to sell what's cool about this film in just one image and 5 lines, and what are those things and images that really tap into people's minds and drag you to watch that, or like in that case it was just go ahead and put it on the table and say this one.
Well, so beyond the lift, what were kind of those iconic images or iconic movies for you growing up in terms of like the forbidden fruit movies that you discovered on your own without somebody else, kind of pushing you onto them?
Yeah, and look, the things the ones that I remember the most, which I don't know if they were iconic for me or not, but usually you remember your first experience, right? The first one when you really discovered there was a world out there. It basically was when you discovered that the guy in the video store wasn't giving you any shit because you were underage. Like, when you discover that place, you realize, here's the place where our dreams are gonna be, gonna come true. And so I do remember like watching The Hand. That was kind of my first horror experience. That's Oliver Stone's second movie, I think. I want to say
Michael Caine.
Michael Caine. Michael Caine wasn't a great point of his career right there, but it's about this guy that loses his hand, and the hand comes back to haunt him and just basically kill everybody he hates. It's brilliant, brilliant story. Actually,
Cautionary tale for holding your hand up because he loses it hanging out the.
He
car.
has rage issues, I think, but he's a cartoonist, I believe. I don't know, but then Evil Dead for sure. It was one of those that again had something very compelling in the back because it was you didn't see a trailer for that. It's not that you were exposed to any trailers. Well, they've seen that in the theaters. It was just suddenly they were there. There was so much stuff to see, right? That you weren't even thinking on opening weekend of what's new because it wasn't about then it became what's new, right? Like when the last time of video stores, it was about the new releases shelves.
That's when they'd have like 50 copies of like Canine Cop, like the wall of Canine
Back
Cop.
in those
But,
days, you remember this feeling like, I want this one. Oh, it's not available.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want me to just book it for you, or whatever you call it here? Like if you want to save it, you were like, no, forget about it.
Yeah, I remember like trying to
I
rent
want
like
something right now.
we wanted Pretty Woman, and we would go repeatedly day after day trying to hope that it was, might be in, and it never was. But
Did they offer you that thing of, but just like
to reserve it?
we would get at my video store, we would get vouchers. So like if you went to rent Pretty Woman and you asked and it wasn't in, they would give you a voucher on a free rental later.
Yeah. Well, Blockbuster changed all of that.
Yeah.
They changed that kind of.
They had multiple
giving
copies.
Multiple copies. That instant gratification of just like waiting by the check-in bin. I would remember standing by the check-in bin waiting for somebody to just drop a VHS.
I remember doing that.
I'd be like, is that Maximum Overdrive over there?
That was the whole thing.
Where is that?
You were about to give back your movie, and there was a bunch of things that they had gave back, but Blockbuster had to put back on the shelf. So you were like trying to.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the return
What do you have in there?
shelf.
What do you have in there?
As you're checking out, seeing that stack there, and you're like,
The person with the power at the video store was that clerk going, yeah, I'll just get to this later. I'll check this in later. You have to watch something else.
I miss those times. It was such a rewarding experience when you really found a movie that was, for some reason, something that will change your life, and suddenly you watch it and it feels it's just you that knows about it, and that, of course, doesn't exist. I mean, I think it exists in other ways.
Yeah.
You may go online and try to find a very obscure movie, but since the moment that you see it on Netflix, it has a rating, and it's already like kind of spoiling it for you, right? Mm-hmm. Because it has 1 star, you know it's going to be bad. It has 5, this one seems to be good. The whole mystery of not knowing if it was good or bad was great. And that was kind of the way, when I was in South by Southwest, I introduced my new movie. But I was so excited. People knew nothing about it, like not even the title, right? Those times are
I think that the quest for kind of the undiscovered is still there, because when we do like our movies from the 90s that you've never heard of or anything like that, there's some of the top articles on the site. So it's like people still want that kind of mystique of I've never heard of this before, that undiscovered gem. I just don't think you find it at Redbox.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. You bring up a good point with your title, and then also kind of relating it to what they did with the Blair Witch. It kind of shows that there is still room for surprise in this day and age of information. That you guys were able to not, until the South by Southwest announcement. It was just untitled Fede Alvarez movie. And then with the Blair Witch Project being the woods for so long. I think I think that's kind of like baby steps back to bringing a little bit of excitement.
There's a new idea of American Horror Story having 6 teasers that are out there, but only one of them is the correct teaser.
Oh,
so they're giving you false, and I love that because I need mystery. I need to be. I mean, just to prove Fede's legit. When he walked in here, I'm wearing a Possession shirt. He pointed to it and said, "I love that movie." So he's legit. Everyone,
that's a Sam Raimi one. Right?
Show over
now.
But I mean, I think that sense of discovery for us as film fans on VHS was a huge part of what puts you down the rabbit hole. And I think we have reached a bit of a saturation with that. And it's like, I want more mystery back. So I'm up for anything that people are going to do to keep it a little more mysterious, so it's not spoiled for me.
I've been like in this, like, right now in the whole craziness of the promotion of the movie, like you get on big tables with the studio and they start showing you trailers, stuff they're going to put out there. And something that Hollywood and those meetings usually you hear a lot is like, I suddenly start saying, like, we shouldn't show this and that because there's, people really pause the trailer these days and go through every shot and trying to figure out what it is. And usually thing they say, which is heartbreaking, is like, oh, but we have that guy's money already. Like, meaning that guy's is going to go anyway. So we don't worry. And I've been really fighting on Evil Dead, in particular in this one, we have a lot more saying on that. Like, that I really care about that guy. Like, because that's the guy I make the movies for. So it's not about, I mean, if I can get the masses to the theater, great. But that guy that's really fascinated by it, that wants to have a great experience, that hopefully the trailers won't spoil it. That guy is the one that I'm paying attention to when I'm in the theater watching the film, right? So it's very important that we take care of that guy. In Hollywood, sometimes lately, it's just like, it doesn't matter. Like, let's try to get the one that would never care about this film, right? Because marketing, that's the point of it. But I still am very romantic about these things. I'm really trying to, as much as I can, as much as you can control it, because of course you want to get people in the theater. So you cannot just show an image of a guy and nothing else, and just hopefully the audience will show up, right?
In your VHS watching days, was there a film or a moment where you realized, I'd like to try to make some home movies myself?
Yeah.
Because I always feel like the more homemade a movie looked, the more you felt like you could maybe do that yourself. Like Evil Dead's the perfect movie for that. Like, you can tell somebody made it. It's not just some slick, glossy Hollywood movie. Yeah. It looks like some guys made it. And did you have one of those?
Accessible, yeah.
It wasn't, curiously enough, it wasn't a movie. And I actually remember this very recently. It's great that you asked me this, and maybe someone can help us to find that VHS. It's not a movie, which is the tricky part, but this is back in, I want to say, 88, about the time, 89. The thing that really made me think about maybe I'll be a filmmaker, or not even that, like just the fact that it made me want to shoot things and tell a story with the camera, was a VHS that I had at home. I don't even know how it found its way to my house, right? But it was there. I think my father bought it on a trip or something like that. It was in, those cheap gifts that your dad brings from a trip. I brought it. It's a shampoo from the hotel. The cheap stuff they give away. Well, and he got that. And this was a VHS that had the making of Death Wish 3. And House 2. You know House?
Remember
the House?
Yeah, of
House
course.
the second story.
Ding Dong, You're Dead.
Yeah.
So, and I try and remember the third movie, but again, it was 3 movies. And basically, because back in those days, you didn't have like DVDs extras to watch that. Right. I mean, how come you would see those things? I mean, maybe it was newsreels that people would show on the news when they were talking about a new movie, but usually there wasn't access to that. And for some reason, I had a VHS at home, and I'll watch it over and over again. I don't think I haven't seen those movies till today. Death Wish, no. I don't think I got to 3. I got 1 and 2.
3's awesome.
Yeah. 3's the one I go to
just
the
skip right to that
guys.
one.
Is that the Takedown?
No, it's the one.
It's the one that had the highest.
Now it's winter.
I think it had the highest kill
Body
count,
count.
body count back
by
then.
far.
The whole town was exploding.
At the time, like it broke some records of body count.
Yeah.
So it's just insane. But anyways, that in House 2, and I really got the chance to see how they were doing makeup and horror stuff. And House 2 was kind of goofy, but had some very fancy animatronics and stuff like that. And it's just as a kid, I was probably 10 at that point. I was just fascinated by that. It was something that I never saw before, and that really was the thing that wanted me to make the things, because I was one of those that I was just watching every day. I was just watch that thing and as if it was a movie when it was just making of. It was B-roll of.
Yeah. Well, they would do. I remember Full Moon would do kind of like these promo things at the end of their feature film.
Oh, yeah.
They would have kind of like a making
The video
of
zone.
At the end of the video zone,
the end
exactly.
of
I
Full
know
Moon,
some
they
of
do
the
the
other
making of.
companies. Yeah, some of the other companies, not like Vestron or anything like that, but maybe the company that put out House 2, they probably had some sort of like little,
Similar.
did you like this feature tonight? Here, watch this.
I have a making of Edge of Sanity VHS that I found. No idea why someone was like, this movie needs a making of, but it's a VHS tape. And I own that.
I vaguely remember
Did you give it to Rob? Has Rob seen that yet?
I could do without it. It's okay. I remember HBO used to do like a first look, because obviously they'd have a 2-hour slot or whatever on cable, and they'd slip in a little 5-minute making of.
I recorded all of those. I don't know about you.
Oh
but
yeah,
I would
tape them because you're like, how often you get to see that?
Exactly.
Stuff?
I remember sitting there and like my dad going, "Okay, it's time to go to bed." I'd be like, "No, 5 minutes. I just need to record this little making of. I'm gonna edit right at the end of the thing." And I would go through. It was funny because when I was moving, I was going through a bunch of VHSs, and I saw one that said "The Making of Braveheart." And I was like, let me just pop this in. What's on here? And it was Ease, The Making of Braveheart. And then halfway through it, I recorded over it for some Tarantino special on Siskel and Ebert. So it was just a sliver of my dateless life growing up in Connecticut. Just getting all this stuff. But I record all of it. But I wish,
There's a way you learn. I mean, I think we're part of a generation that we learn a lot through just watching those things. And, how do you really shoot a movie and all that? Because information is like, it's not like, it wasn't like today when you have internet, it just like ruined the whole thing. It's just like back then you could really, you had to discover it, and discovering things meant a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's why we, just by watching those things and watching movies, like you start to crack the mystery of how they make these things, right?
Well, I don't know if it's the same with you too, but I mean, I remember when to kind of relate it to Sam Raimi, when they were doing the Army of Darkness and they were doing like the kind of making of, they would show some of the rigs, even Evil Dead 2, and the Fango. You would see Sam and the gang, and then the camera on some plank, and you're like, I could do that. Like I can. So you would like grab some really expensive camera that your parents probably got you and just throw it on a piece of wood and then run around with it. I mean, like that was our film school.
Yeah, there used to be, and I don't even remember which channel it was on, but it was early 90s, and they would show you how to do, it was like little clips that they would put, like interstitials, and they would show you how to do like homemade effects. I think it was called Scare Tactics.
Oh, that's cool.
But I remember one that they
Steve
did.
Johnson, the effects artist who at the time was married to Linnea Quigley, would do these little segments. I think it was called
That
Scream
might
It,
have been this.
where he would show you how to make fangs out of like gum,
Candy.
gum
Yeah,
and
that's
candy.
it. That's the one I was
and
getting.
as a kid, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to go scare
Oh my
the
God.
neighbors
Then
now.
I have to show him this because there's
Yeah.
actually, we saw that, and it played on it played before like Joe Bob Briggs show or something when I was a kid, or like USA Up All Night. And so when I was like a freshman in high school, we made a movie where everyone had Laffy Taffy fangs in, which were these fangs I had actually sculpted out of Laffy Taffy because of that Scare Tactics show. So I still have that video somewhere of us with these great purple fangs.
Did you explore other avenues of film? Did you ever want to be anything else, or was like being a writer, director the thing for you right from the get-go?
I think the thing you have to understand is I never wanted to be even a director. It was just something I was doing. And then I realized I was a grown man. I was still doing it. And one day someone offered me to pay me to keep doing it. I was like, all right, that's what I do. But it was never something that maybe it's because I'm from Uruguay and it wasn't a real career.
Yeah.
Like maybe these days, yes, you can be an independent filmmaker and starve to death if you want. But you, like in every place, I guess it's very hard to think about that as a real career. Here, if you're in Los Angeles, maybe there's so many film schools and stuff, like people can really consider that. In Uruguay, not really. So it was just something that I started doing when I was 7. I had I was lucky enough to have a camera at home. My father was kind of involved in, documentary stuff and stuff like that. He was a film lover, and so I had this VHS, with the cable and the backpack, not even a camcorder, just a camera and the recorder apart. And I would just do stop motion first with Playmobiles and Star Wars figures, and so I was just from that point on, I was just doing it all the time. And it got to a point where I was like 15. I was doing the whole piece of wood or like just with roller skates, doing like some sort of dolly and just creating stuff like that with a very cheap camera. And we were doing a superhero saga back then, and where I was acting. It was the last time I think I acted. Thank God. But I've been always fascinated by the craft of filmmaker above all things, I guess, and that was the thing that got me into doing it all the time. Yeah. So I don't think there's one single aspect of the craft filmmaker that I don't kind of, that at least I'm mediocre at, but I can kind of do. Yeah. I'm a musician myself. I play a lot of instruments. I have a viola solo on this movie, on the credits. If you can see, like there's all sort of things I do. I do a lot of special effects. I actually did VFX on this movie, like budgets. When you don't have the money to pay for it, you have to do it yourself. And that there's, every aspect of it. I'm just fascinated by all that. I've always been. And so it happened to, every time I was doing something, I was happened to be the director of it.
Yeah.
And one day I realized, I looked back and I thought, oh, man, I'm doing this for 15 years now. And
wow.
Maybe that's what I should do for a living. But it wasn't really, something that it wasn't a master plan or a decision that I made, or like, what? It's not that I look at the horizon one day. I said, like, I got to be a filmmaker. That never
Did you have any
happened.
models in Uruguay, like filmmakers who made, like, or was it mostly American influences that were?
It was mostly American influences, I guess. But there was a few. Yes, there was a few guys in Uruguay that were doing like B movies and stuff like that with no money. There's one that is a classic in Uruguay called Plenilunio, which means like full moon something, about this werewolf. But you got to imagine the most low budget version of a werewolf movie with the shittiest costume you can imagine.
Sold.
But it was amazing. It was mind blowing for me, because it was like, oh man, like you can actually do these things here. Like it's not a Hollywood thing. You can actually do it. And sometimes when you see things that are bad are the best inspiration, because you go like, I can do better, right? And if that thing that was not great has some exposure, maybe I can do better, right? That's the best motivation sometimes. Not seeing masterpieces sometimes just like, beat you to the ground. It makes you want to feel just go home and die and don't do it and never do anything, right? So sometimes it's good that there's no masters around, right?
I grew up in New Zealand, and I remember very well when I saw Bad Taste, and it was like, and it was so interesting because we weren't making horror films at that time. There'd been one, but the film commission, they'd make a couple films a year, and they realized that if they made a horror film, it would at least sell and balance the budget of all the art stuff they would make. And I remember seeing that and just going, like, the first half of it going, oh, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. And then the second half where he got funding, so he didn't have funding the first half, he made it on his own. Then they saw that and go, here's some money. Suddenly they're aliens, and I remember going, and as the years went on, it became one of my favorite, kind of like what I imagine Evil Dead is to somebody from Michigan the first time. It's like totally inspiring to think of how much imagination went into creating this thing that is kind of shitty, but also kind of amazing.
Because our parents are always going to tell us, like, forget about it,
Yeah.
right? That's what any responsible parent should tell their sons when they want to be filmmakers. Like, just forget about it, right? So it's not a real thing. Like that, nah, get a real job.
Right.
So they tell you that, and as a kid, you believe it. They tell you that you're gonna, you're not gonna go like, what, bullshit. I'm gonna do it anyways. Like, no kid says that. Maybe as a teenager, eventually, but not even that. You might say it, but you believe he's right? Yeah. But it is like, when you find people like that on your community that managed to do it, they go like, I just can't do it. Like, there's no, whatever was the point of your parents is like completely destroyed by that person because they come from the same neighborhood.
They never did it. What do they know? Our parents don't know.
I wanted to ask a little bit about, I remember when your short Panic Attack like debuted online, and it was one of those, in my memory, one of those first shorts that immediately became kind of like a viral thing. Like, you have to see this thing. So I was wondering if you could contextualize a little bit. What was kind of the goal of Panic Attack? What were you making it for? Were you making it to get attention and make the next step in terms of filmmaking?
No, man. You've been listening to all I've been saying? Like, of course not.
I don't know.
It was just me. Before Panic Attack, they're actually on YouTube. I have some Star Wars fan shorts that I did. It was just stuff that I was doing. I mean, at that point, I was already a professional. I was doing commercials since I was like 22, something like that. As soon as I finished college, I got hired by a production company to do commercials, and I wasn't very successful at it. I would do commercials every 6 months. It was something like that. But they had me in house, and they were kind of paying me a salary, so it was great. And I was able to experiment and do things. And Panic Attack was just that. It was, again, a little bit of that thing of the small village thing, feeling that I had, and I wanted to do something that showcased my city, but with something that was big and just part of a Hollywood movie, right? Which was giant robots and an alien invasion. So I was like, I want to see that, but I don't want to see it in New York or in Los Angeles. I want to see it in my town, in my corner, in the place where I grew up, because nobody's doing it. So I might as well do it myself. And again, I've been obsessed with every part of the craft of filmmaking. At that point, I was already a VFX artist. I did every special effect on that short with a friend of mine that helped me with some of the modeling and stuff like that. But basically, it was just me doing the whole thing. And just to give you a perspective, I finished it, and it was like, now I'm going to exploit this thing to the ground. Now I'm going to go to every festival. My attitude was like, thank God I'm done. I showed it to one of my best friends at home. He said like, meh. I was like, yeah, whatever. And I just put it on YouTube, and I went to bed. And I was like, oh, thank God I'm done. And YouTube just released a HD format that didn't exist the 2 weeks before that, there was no HD format in YouTube. It was just like 360, right?
Yeah.
Talking technical, but it was very low quality. But suddenly they did like, oh, now you can do HD. So I was like, oh, so I can put it there and just for the reason and purpose of sending to my friends and whoever was going to see it in Uruguay, or just like forward a link and not a MOV and not a like actual QuickTime. And I put it there, and I went to bed, and I woke up, and I had like 150 emails from Hollywood. And I was like, who are these people? I had no idea what an agency was, to give you an example.
Wow.
I had so I couldn't be looking for an agent when I don't know what an agent is. Still don't know. But all I know is take my 10%. But it was basically, they're great, sorry. But basically they were pitching, every agency, every major agency here, every studio, every producer, everybody. It was like insane. I was just scrolling through emails, just having a laugh with my friends. It was really.
I wonder how that
insane.
starts. On you, like you posted. I wonder who the first person who has to share that for it to catch fire.
It's usually an assistant or a development exec who.
No, you know who? You know who he was? I know who that.
Oh,
person
you've traced
was.
it back to patient zero.
Yeah,
like
it was.
the
It was
original.
very easy because YouTube shows you the links of all your hits where it come from. It was Kanye West.
Get out of here.
Jared, you sure?
It was him.
Wow.
He used to have. I mean, he knows he's got like a kind of a joke these days for everybody. I guess I don't know. I cannot even sing one of his songs. I'm completely out of that world. I have no idea who he is. I know who he is, his name, but it's basically he used to have a very influential blog in the animation world. He was doing really good curations of animation stuff and like music videos. Like this is like
my mind's
obviously
kind of blown here, guys.
7
Just
years
a-
ago. It was 7 years ago now, and he was doing that, and he picked it up from this other smaller website. And he really was the one that blew it up here in Los Angeles. Hey, if one day I met him, I had to go like, hey, dude, thank you for that.
His glowing review of Pacific Rim makes total sense now.
What did he say in Pacific
He
Rim?
tweeted it was like the best movie he's ever seen in his life or something like that.
So he
when
likes
watched
giant
that. He likes
robots.
giant robots.
Yeah,
It's
giant
Wow.
robots.
I think the winner is that you use that piece of music from 28 Days Later.
Yeah.
It's In a Heartbeat. That,
In the House in a Heartbeat by
In-
Tom Murphy. Yeah.
that you could cut that to anything, and
Anything.
it'll work.
You're completely true. The short was kind of okay. I put that music on, and it was amazing. And then I had to remove it because I was like, I don't have the rights for this. But then it was like, I think I'm just gonna keep it. Like nobody's gonna sue me because nobody's gonna see it. And then they saw it. And actually, I remember getting an email when I think WME was trying to sign me. They're my agency these days, but at that point, I signed with CA. They were trying to sign me, and they sent me an email from. Usually what they do is send you emails from other directors they represent just to get you, just a bunch of name dropping, and they sent me an email from Danny Boy says that he had seen it and he loved it, and he made the remark, of course, that the music was his favorite part. He was saying I hit like that.
That's amazing. It's just like the ripples of excitement, I'm sure. Just like Kanye, Danny Boyle. I mean, for you.
I had no idea who Kanye was at that point.
No,
I had
absolutely.
no idea.
But I mean,
it's just dude.
Right.
It's just,
But for you,
then eventually, like 3 years later, I looked back, I was like, wait a second. And I just like went and checked it back, and it was like, who he was.
So what
But
was
at that
it-
point, I had no idea.
Like what did you do getting up and getting all this attention over the next couple of days in Uruguay?
But that's just the beginning, because the best part of the story is that there's a Sunday. The agency actually flew, like one of the agencies, I'm not going to name it, but they fly me to LA, business class. Never
Had
flew
you been to
business
LA
class in my
before?
life. Yes, I've been. I had another story that is my first LA story that is insane also, but this is the second insane LA story actually. And I come here, I have like 2 weeks set up, lineup of meetings with everybody, right? And I go to have coffee with Roy Lee, which is a producer that you guys might know. Yep. It's a great Hollywood producer. And he basically, we have coffee in the morning, blah, blah, blah. You know, what do you want to do? I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I just land here. I'm not understanding what's going on. And then when we're saying goodbye, I ask him just in a cheeky way, like, what are you going to do? Where are you going? And he said, I'm just going to catch a screening. And I'm like, is that a free movie? And he says, like, yes. And again, can I go? And he said, like, well, let me check. He sends a text. And he's like, oh, yes, you can come. It was a private thing, so you couldn't just bring anybody. Right. But I was like so excited. I was going to see a free movie, and I was in Hollywood. And he takes me to see a screening of Kick-Ass, of a very early version of Kick-Ass, because they were trying to pitch the director to direct Oldboy, the remake. And he was pitching it to Nathan Kahane, which happens to be the producer on Evil Dead and also Don't Breathe. it was just by accident almost, because I tag along into that thing. I get to know him on the screening. I watch the movie. I give him my notes on the cot, which wasn't really brilliant at that point, but still I had some things that weren't working for me. So I give him some notes. We chat, blah, blah, blah. I go to the bathroom. While I'm going to the bathroom, Nathan Kahane started negotiating with this guy like some $1 million deal for me to make a movie. At that point, I got to tell you, I'm on the bathroom checking the toilet paper, which is so soft, so soft in Beverly Hills. I'm like, oh my God, they have this in a public bathroom. This is better than towels I have at home.
Just rubbing it on
and
your
when
face.
I'm rubbing it on my face,
It's Crocodile Dundee
in the
3.
other side, it's insane. Like Nathan, these guys are talking about like, oh, this guy's a millionaire. Like he won't do it for nothing. Like he's not going to take a small movie. I would have said yes to anything to throw my way. But and then I come back to the conversation. They're like, everybody's acting cool. I go back to the hotel and I get a call like, look, they offering you a blind deal to make a $30 million movie, whatever you want it to be, and just you'll figure it out. But you have a movie deal. And I was like,
30 million,
what?
you'll figure
I
it
should
out.
have done this ages ago. This is like the easiest thing in the world. And obviously, I know now that it's not, right? But back then, you got to believe me. I mean, my perspective was like, it just landed here. I went to see a movie, and the first guy that I meet wants to offer me to make a movie, right? It was just insane. And I canceled all those meetings because I had no need to have them. I was just excited. I wanted to go back home. That night, I think I was in Chateau Marmont in Hollywood, and I was having drinks with Dr. Shepard from Lost, which was my favorite
Fox.
show at that point. We're just having drinks, and I realized at that moment, like, wait a second, nobody back home knows about this. I have to go and call someone. I went to the bathroom and called Rodo, my co-writer in this, and Evil Dead in this movie, and I was like, dude, we got to make a movie in Hollywood. And he was like, what?
We can get Matthew Fox.
Yeah, we can get Matthew Fox. Actually, I have a drink with him, and he was like, what? I was like, I call you tomorrow and tell you all about it. And that deal eventually, that relationship turned into Evil Dead, and that's basically how I ended up making movies here, which I know is pretty bizarre, but that's how it happened to me, and like it was a lot of fun.
Did they then send the film to Raimi?
He have seen it already.
Oh, he'd already seen it.
Yeah. By that point, everybody's seen it in Hollywood. Yeah. That's already like a few days, like 4 or 5 days after it went viral here. So everybody's seen it. And that was Nathan commentary to me. He was like, "Oh, you're the guy that made the short Sam Raimi saw it and he loved it." The funny part is, I was naive, but at the same time, I was very cautious, and they offered me that blind deal to have a movie like Chaperone by Sam Raimi, and my comment was like, "Yeah, but I won't sign anything until I talk with Sam Raimi," because I was like, I love his movies. I'm a huge fan, but maybe he's an asshole, and I don't want to make a movie with him. So now I look back, and I was like, what was I thinking? Obviously, it was part of the feeling that I thought it was easy. It was so easy because I just landed in the first person I met. So I was like, must be others like him. I don't know if that was the case, but at least I was brave enough to challenge that, and I'm proud of that because I've seen even today a lot of people that just go through the same offer they get. The first thing they hear, they just say yes. The goal is to just make a movie. It doesn't matter what it is, and all the things that thank God for some reason I did had that. I was like it really meant so much to me. That was, if you asked me at that point, what is the goal in your life? It's just I have to make a feature. That was all I cared. Like, I was going to try to hopefully do that in Uruguay someday, but it was the goal of my life. But it was almost like a dream that I never confessed to anybody, right? So suddenly, when I was in that situation, I was like, now I got to make sure that I make the right thing, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, we spoke to Sam, and of course, he's the sweetest man alive. He's great, and we were exactly on the same page about what was the kind of movie that I should do, and what was the thing that we just talk movies, and you realize when you talk movies, it's kind of a language that you understand exactly if you get along with the other person or not, and that's how the whole thing of the first movie came about. That's amazing.
Was it true that you were talking to Sam about another movie, possibly Panic Attack as a feature, and then he was like, "What do you think of Evil Dead?" Is that how it kind of came up?
It kind of happened at the same time. I mean, honestly, that first deal. First was, why don't we make a feature version of the short? And my answer was like, no, that makes no sense. The short is meant for 5 minutes. I don't see a feature version of that. I mean, again, insane. Like usually, I would advise any filmmaker out there, if they make a short and want to make it turn into a movie, say yes. Like you just say yes to all. And but for some reason, I said like, no, I think that makes no sense. Let's just, if we want to do an Alien Invasion movie, which I did, let's just create a new one, and we do something different. And we started kind of developing that, and we had another writer came in to work on that. At that point, I was naive enough to think that I just could pitch that to a writer, and they will turn me a great script, and I will shoot it. Now I know it's not the case. And through that project, I learned that it's not that easy, right? And while I think we're starting to develop in that, Sam asked me also, like a second project, like what about making a new Evil Dead? And I was like, yes, let's do it. I was such a big fan, and also like, look, it's the thing that everybody asks me always about the challenge, of course, of making a new Evil Dead and all that, and the burden or whatever is the if you gotta try to frame it in a dark perspective, like get to understand that from my point of view at that point, like who's gonna say no to that? Who's gonna go like, you know what, no, like just you don't remake classics, like no. And you're not gonna tell no to Sam Raimi. I would have said no to this if a studio was just coming to me saying like we're gonna exploit this property. I would have said no, like I said many times, what other approach that I've heard on that tone. But this is the filmmaker saying like, I think that story deserved to be brought to a new a modern audience, because the reality is like young kids will have no clue what Evil Dead was. I tell you as a fact that 50% of the audience or more that saw my movie thinks it's an original movie. They don't know it's a remake. It doesn't say remake on the title, and during I don't even remember if the promo material said anything about that. And like because like when I saw The Fly or when I saw The Blob or when I saw The Thing, I had no clue they were remakes. I just saw them as new movies and I enjoy the hell out of them. So it's not until you become more of a connoisseur and you go and dig back and you realize there are remakes. So I thought like I can do that for a younger audience and give them those movies. I'm not gonna deprive them from having like a new version of those movies. That obviously I was hoping it could be good and could survive and could do what The Fly and The Blob and those movies did for me, right? The Blob. I'm talking about The Blob. It's a masterpiece.
It is good.
The Blob is good.
It was pretty quintessential in the 80s.
I'm not talking about Steve McQueen.
I'm sorry, you're talking about the guy who did the commentary for The Blob.
Yes.
What we discussed today. Because I watched
I'm talking about the Kevin Dillon.
Well, it totally blew my mind when I saw it because I knew one existed beforehand because my mom talked about it. But it was impressive. There was half a body in it. Come on.
It was great. I'm not saying it's a masterpiece.
No,
I love it when it came out, right? But it's not that it left a legacy. But for us, probably did, right?
It's not like The Fly. The Fly holds up because of its themes and stuff. Nobody looks at The Blob. Everybody looks at The Blob and goes, "Those effects are fucking killer."
I think
but they don't go.
First 2/3 holds
thematically
up
speaking,
it's pretty.
And it's got Shawnee Smith. Heyday Shawnee
Smith.
Yeah.
Well, just to prove that your point was valid, I remember the second time I went to see your Evil Dead, because I didn't stay the first time, and everyone's like, "Oh, like Bruce Campbell's at the end after the credits." So I stayed to the end, and there was a group of really young teenage kids in front of me. And when Bruce came on and said his groovy, they're like, "Oh my God, it's the guy from Burn Notice." And I was like, they had no clue why he was there. And I was like, no clue. All right, so be it.
There's going to be a Burn Notice crossover. It's amazing.
But it also the other thing that I add is that I wasn't remaking The Exorcist. I wasn't remaking, and with all due respect to Sam movie, and he knows that it was a movie made with no money. Right. It's like very campy. It's like Z class. It's like no budget. It's insane. I loved it when I saw it the first time, and it blew my mind because it was so scary. It was the scariest thing I ever seen when I watched that movie. So that was the thing that I was trying to bring back those feelings into a new movie that had more of a format that will appeal a bigger audience. And so I think there's other movies like other horror classics. Like it's the same thing we talk about The Fly and The Blob. Like there's, I think Evil Dead is better than The Blob, but still it's one of those that you can make it with other techniques and make it more modern without being. And again, we were never trying to overwrite that one. We just do a new one. Yeah. So it was more of a sequel in my mind, always like a reboot sequel thing.
I think it also kind of brought out a collective amnesia that everybody seemed to have. Those who even did remember it peripherally.
Oh, thinking that the first one was funny.
Yeah, because I remember when the press started coming out, and I was at Fangoria at the time, and it was like, there's a new Evil Dead and it's not going to be funny. And I remember just seeing the comments we had boards at the time and people being like, what the hell is not going to be funny? That's not Evil Dead. And then we had to be like, actually, yeah. But it was like everyone had forgotten that the original Evil Dead was very visceral, very just serious, scary as shit, and very
gritty
kind of
and
homespun.
weird and,
Yeah.
yeah.
And taboo
DIY.
breaking, a lot of taboo breaking, and
Yeah.
stuff that's very out there, like tree rape. Obviously. How early was it, and did it come from you or Sam, the idea of not including Ash as a character? Because for me, that was the instant thing that made it let me just experience it as its own film. And I think without that, if some guy had walked in going, "My name's Ash," suddenly you would have had this weird feeling towards the film. But without that, it was brilliant. And weird that was that just
It was
early
just
on?
me saying, as a fan, I was like, don't make me do that. Like I don't.
Yeah,
know
smart.
Nobody wants to see that. It would have been impossible, not just for the actor that plays that, because Ash has that it thing that is kind of impossible to drag. It's not that you tell him you gotta go and tell the actor just go and be Bruce Campbell. It's just impossible, right? It's
And
one
he
of
didn't
those
really have it on
magical
the
things.
first one. That's the funny thing. It's really the second film that becomes a thing.
Yeah. So it was clear that we were going to have new characters, a new story, and also as a filmmaker, it would have been interesting to just tell that story again.
Yeah.
It was really. I tell you how we did it. Honestly, it was when I was going to pitch it to Sam. I was like, I'm not going to rewatch it, and probably at that point, I've seen it like 10 years ago, right? Probably. I've seen it a couple of times, and the last time was like 10 years before that. And it was like, and I was about to rewatch it. I was like, maybe I shouldn't watch it again, and I should just try to come up with a story where I've put in the story the things that I remember that stood with me after so many years. Because whatever stood with you must be the best parts, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you forgot is probably not so interesting. So I really tried to do that, and the first pitch to him, before we had the full movie, but kind of my approach of what would I do, include those strong images that stood in my mind and really made an impression when I saw it the first time, which was, of course, the girl talking through the cellar door and being all mean and that deceiving thing that the characters had, like you never know when they're possessed or not, and they playing with you. The isolation factor of the last survivor that's suddenly surrounded by death and there's demons somewhere and is possessing his friends. Like all the things were the big things and ideas that I knew that if we do a new one, all I need is to have the things that I remember. If I have to rewatch it, then I'm cheating. I'm just like recreating or just like reproducing the same idea again. So we really went with that, with our guts of what we thought was Evil Dead. And for me, it was always a terrifying movie. I mean, and I love Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, great classics. But that's something I saw when I was, again, more of a teenager, like already entering a phase of more like really getting to film, the directors and the writers. But most of the audience don't do that. It's just this gut feeling of why a movie is scary, what are the themes, what is provoking about it. So if you get too deep, and then I eventually did something that was, I think, hopefully for everybody, had that part for the people that didn't know anything, and there's like, and it's filled with details that are like quotes or like just Easter eggs of the original, like to a level that even a lot of people haven't discovered lots of them, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a hyper awareness as you get older as a film fan or a horror fan. It's like seeing Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time and going, "What the fuck? This is like someone insane is behind this camera."
Yeah.
And then getting older and learning more about the aesthetic of film and stuff like that, and going, watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre from that perspective and going, oh, I see what they did there, and Toby was moving the camera here, and this little zinger. So I totally get that, especially with Evil Dead, because I remember renting that on just like a Saturday night during summer, and I'd seen Evil Dead 2 first. So watching Evil Dead, I was like, what the hell? It was like reverse engineering. It was like, where's the laughs? Bruce looks so much like Bruce looks like a baby, and he's such a chump in this. Like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, I didn't like the original Evil Dead for a really long stretch because I saw Evil Dead 2 in Army in high school, and then somebody was like, oh, let's check out the original, and we were like, what is this garbage? No, this isn't Evil Dead. And I didn't have like
watch the second and the third first. Like, if I knew, even when I was 12, if I knew there was a previous one, I would never watch that.
Oh my god! Actually,
I
I
think it was
know
about
about you.
accessibility.
Never.
Yeah, I
Number
may
2 in it.
have-
I haven't seen the first one. Not interested.
I may
gotta see
have
the
actually
first one
seen Army first because I saw it in the
boy.
theater. I remember
What?
seeing.
Really?
I saw Army of
God. I saw
Darkness
Army
in
of
the
Darkness in
theater,
theaters, too.
and
Yeah, I
I
remember that.
can't remember whether I saw that or the second one
Well,
first.
it was
but, yeah.
Evil Dead 2 was pitched to me as because my dad was a huge horror fan, so he was just like, "Look, he's like, you really don't need to see Evil Dead 1 because this is kind of like a reboot. Wasn't in the vernacular at the time. It was just like you could start with this. It's fine. And so we jumped right in. Yeah, but
He's making faces at you.
I
Ryan.
know.
No excuse.
I'll
agree
slap
with
my
your
dad.
dad.
Yeah.
Although I will say, because obviously as a kid I saw them all, but I related more. Like I loved Evil Dead 2. It was just everything about it was my taste. Yeah. But years and years later, I saw a revival screening of the original Evil Dead, and it took on a whole different meaning seeing it on the big screen with an audience.
Absolutely,
Like then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I totally get this movie now and why it is what it is. But
I liked it more seeing it recently.
Yeah.
I'm
seeing it on the big
shocked
screen-
that I liked it more, the first one over the second. They played back to back with Bruce and Sam
right.
talking. And after the first, I was like, the second started, I was like, I've seen the second so many times. I was like, I don't know if I need to stay for the rest of the second. But the first was like seeing it. I know it's just exciting to see it like that again.
And I've often said to me the best test of a remake is if you could do a double bill with the original and the remake back to back and it plays great, like you're not watching the exact same movie but same theme, then you've got a good remake.
Yeah, that word
And-
faithfulness. It's like, I think it's really weird when people write, oh, it's not faithful to the original. It's like the only thing you want to be faithful to is a feeling.
The
but if you're faithful to
tone.
the story, I don't need to see it.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing, less so the Blob Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the films felt totally new versions of a story, of an idea filtered through a director who had something to say with it. You know, it's,
So I'm curious, kind of like getting the 1,000-yard view of who you are before you do Evil Dead, and then going through the process of working with Sam, working on set of a multi-million-dollar movie, and then dealing with the fans, and then coming out the other side. You know, how had you changed a little bit in terms of how you see film, how you just as an artist as well?
Yeah, it's a very tough question. I mean, this is, think about actors. With actors, the best actors are the ones that have, if I have to really point one ability they have, is to not be self-aware when they acting, right? They have that ability to suddenly they turn a switch and suddenly they're not here. They're in a parallel dimension that is a movie, and it usually is scary to see that. It's scary in a fascinating way. Like it's just like you don't know how they do it, right? So I had that ability when I made Evil Dead. I was in completely, in a different world. I was reading some of the things online, but I was just fascinated. There was like 100 people talking about a movie that Fede was going to do. It's just insane because like not too long ago, I was back home with not even a plan at ever working in Hollywood. So the bright side was always better. It was like, oh my God, like what's happening, right? I was writing the script and reading on my side, like this movie's gonna suck. Like, oh, well, we'll see. It was just
Fade out.
it was insane. Like it was really, since the day was announced and there was debate. There was people saying, and most people were, particularly in the first part, like when it was just announced and being developed, everybody was saying no. And for me, it was like, well, at least people cares, and it's insane that people care so much. So I think I'm a bit more aware today of many things that I wasn't. Like when I tell you a story how I got a short, I know that doesn't happen every day, right? And I know how hard it is to get any movie made these days. So what does that do? I don't know. I think I want to think that, and I want to say that I'm more cautious about certain things because on Evil Dead I was just a madman. I was just like doing whatever came to my mind, and on set, I remember my opening speech on set was like, okay, everybody here made a movie except me, and I'm a director, so we kind of fucked. So it was basically, I'm going to need everybody's help, and it was a fact. It was just a fact. It was like everybody, even the PA was involved in more features than I was because, when you make your first movie, you're the only one that hasn't made one. Unless you have work as an AD, stuff like that I never did. So, but that gave me a lot of freedom to just, not know exactly what I'm supposed to do and what I'm not supposed to do, and not know, like, when I'm pitching the rain blood in the script, I had no idea, like, how complicated it was going to be, and the nightmare that it was going to be. Like, everything was drenched in blood, the cameras, everybody was just, like, working on this, like, inside this plastic bags. It was just a nightmare. So the more you go through to experience that, just show you how hard it is, the more you learn. And learning is a bad thing sometimes when it comes to these things. Like it's like they say, the more you learn, the less you know, they say. And it's true. I mean, the more you learn, you become cautious, and that's what I'm really trying to fight. So I think on Don't Breathe, I really did like, what, if I was a crazy person in Evil Dead, I gotta be even more insane here. Once I embrace, when I decide this is a movie I'm gonna make, I don't have to care about anything. You've seen the movie, and you know what I'm talking about, right? It just gets to a point that it really gets to a point that, you know, some audience goes like, I'm out. Like, it just this is ridiculous. It just goes too far, right? At some point. And some
Now I'm in.
yeah, but if you're a fan of horror, you go like, yeah, baby. Because you don't want down the middle. You don't want watered down. You don't want like Hollywood PG-13, whatever. You want the real thing, right? You want something that gets to a point that you don't understand how someone could have done that or shot that and said like, this is going to be great. It's going to work.
You don't want to feel safe. As a horror fan, you don't want to feel safe.
Yeah.
You want to feel like you fall in very fast and the gravity's just pulling. You don't know when you're going to hit the floor, right? It's just like you're falling in a dark hole and it's like, and you're like, oh my God, when it's coming. And that's what it should happen. So because I'm a bit more self-aware now of those things, that as an artist, the worst thing that can happen to you is just try to be cautious or be worried or be scared about what may happen. And because Evil Dead, against all odds, it worked. I mean, just the fact that, you know, there was an audience that embraced it and went and just making a gory movie at that level of gore and make it a massive hit, like massive audience showing it to see it and make a movie made like $100 million worldwide. That was never done before. I mean, there's a movie that is so gory that has that level of success, right?
Because I can't believe what you guys got away with.
Yeah,
it's insane. It's R-rated. That should be NC-17.
Even Don't Breathe, you've got away with a little bit of stuff too.
NC-17 texture.
Did you have to like combat the studio execs for that? I mean, because being a first-time filmmaker, I feel like sometimes they might be like, you know, it'd be like filmmaking by committee where they're trying to pressure you into certain decisions. But did you have to get combative to have that level of gore, or were they just kind of like, do your thing, man?
No, on Evil, I mean, it was very clear on the script, right? It read NC-17. It read like something that was just impossible to put on the screens and say it was rated R. And Rob Tapper, you know, like producer of the originals and Sam Raimi's partner on all those movies, he said like, look, this read as NC-17. And my pitch was like, look, there's none of those things that if you cut them out, the story makes no sense. Most of them are just to shock you and scare you, which is what the demons are trying to do. So it's part of the story, right? And so it's like worst case scenario, we don't show it, but let me shoot it, right? And then, of course, I said I'm going to do all practical, and that's when they lose their minds. They're like, wait a second, we're going to spend all this money doing these very fancy practical effects that are going to take over the whole day, and then you're not going to use it. And I was like, well, now we're here, we're going to dance, right? Let's just do it. And they were like, that's really credit to them and Sam Raimi, Rob Tapper, who were like, well, you know, after a few days of shooting, you kind of realize if the director knows what he's doing or not. And they were like, after 10 days of just do the drama and some setup stuff and just shooting, they go like, well, this guy's he's not insane. Because it takes, I mean, you guys know, you know, I don't know if the audience knows, but really leading these machines that are making movies and leading a pack of 100 people, like you cannot be insane, right? Like if you're just never going to get anywhere. So it's always a mix of both. And I think after a few days, they saw, well, Fede knows what he's doing. Just leave him to do his thing. And I did it. And then like the whole committee part of Hollywood that you're talking about usually comes after they test the movie and test low, right? Mm-hmm. You know, all these movies get a screen test and you get a score. And if that score is low, that's when everybody sleeve up and say, hey, how are we going to fix this? And that's when the whole committee comes and the filmmaker goes like, they crushed my vision. That wasn't my movie, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I've been lucky that my 2 movies, we tested once, score very high. We never test them again. So we never get to the point of having everybody throwing opinions on how we're going to fix it. Because if I deliver a cut that is my director's cut, that when I show it to an audience, I have a standing ovation, like we got an Evil Dead and we got an Don't Breathe at the test screening, which is the coldest audience you'll ever get. Mm-hmm. Then the studio goes like, we're not going to change this, even if they don't like it, because I know in Evil Dead they didn't like some things and I Don't Breathe they didn't like other things. But once you have your audience behind you clapping, all you do the just
for those of you at home, he's doing like a victory dance. How would you describe
your
that?
audience? Like you just everybody claps and you go, they're there, and you know, and so nobody can fight it. And again, I had really great producers on my 2 movies, and the same studio. Which, if they trust me on Evil Dead, they trust me even more on this one. So I've been lucky to get away with whatever I want to do. And I really believe I always say that usually the movies the best movies are the ones that I enjoy the most. Usually, come from directors that that are coming out of a movie that really worked in the box office, regardless if it was good or not. Because that's usually when the studio empowered them, right? Like Children of Men, like this. That movie will never get made if it wasn't because he was coming from some massive Harry Potter movie or something.
Yeah.
Like it just you get those, movies just when you come out of something that works. So I either you go safe or you go crazy and do whatever you want, and that's what I did with Don't Breathe. I was like, I just gonna do exactly what I want to do. I'm gonna roll back a little bit and feel like this is my first movie. Like if Evil Dead was my first movie, obviously, but because it was Sam's as well and it was based on Sam's, I really needed to go to a white page and create a story from scratch. And I think to answer your question, like that was the thing that I really enjoyed in this one and that I couldn't experience on Evil Dead, like writing without people saying it's gonna suck right away, because nobody knew about it when I was writing it, and it wasn't until they saw it that it knew it existed. So that gives you a lot of freedom, and as a director, that's what I want. That's what I enjoy.
Well, that kind of ties into another question I had about just touching on Don't Breathe a little bit. After Evil Dead, you probably had a bunch of projects flung your way, and you probably could have been attached to a bunch of stuff, but you decided to self-generate something again. What was the decision behind that, as opposed to taking something that was already created on page by somebody else and allowing you to just go and run with the money and make a big movie?
Oh, that's the thing, I guess, is that I don't. Part of it is a decision, and part of it is just emotional. Just you read scripts, right? Scripts are sent your way. And after Evil Dead, I got all those, calls for. Sometimes it wasn't just they offering this movie, but I remember they were asking me they want to meet you for Fast and the Furious, right? Of 6, I think they were doing, like James Wan ended up doing, and I would answer the email saying subject no. It's just like not because I think those movies are bad. I really enjoy the shit out of some movies. Some of those, and some of those, honestly.
One of them for me.
And some of them are great. But it was like that's not as a filmmaker, I think I just want to make movies that my audience, when they go to see it, the fact that they know who directed it and what they did before makes the whole experience better. Because as an audience, that's how I enjoy most of the best movies I've seen. It was like, I'm going to see the new movie from this guy. And it just makes the whole experience more personal. I don't know. There's something about when there's not a lot of filmmakers that people know their names and they associate them with other movies, and makes the whole watching of the movie part of the experience. And if I can wish for something in my life, that's what I want to do, right? I want to make my brand. I want to have my name and my movies that people can remember and can see, like, that's the filmography. Oh, he did that, and then he went to that Crazy Face when he did that other one, and then he went to the. And I think if you go to do Fast and the Furious, it's just like you go to a limbo of what does that mean? Like, I don't see Fincher making one of those.
It's hard for a filmmaker to put their stamp on it, because it's kind of like it's like doing TV. It's like you go in, point the camera, you work with characters that are already pre-established.
Exactly. Yeah. Like recently, it was all over the place with this article, which kind of was true, that it's saying they say no to a Marvel movie. It's not that I was in deep conversations with them. It's like, fuck them. I never got to that. It was kind of the same thing. I got a conversation. They were talking about one of those movies, and I was like, oh, no, man. And then what really made me when I decided not to do it was like, I'm not going to pursue that, because I realized I couldn't really tell the difference between what was the style of Joss Whedon or like Jon Favreau. I couldn't. Like, how come? I know, and there are other movies, but I don't know based on his Marvel movies or like the Russo brothers. And they're all masters of their craft and they're awesome, but the movie takes so much of what the whole thing is, and the style in Marvel and the colors, and a lot of those big movies do that, right? They just take over, and the filmmaker kind of disappears there, which doesn't mean they don't do anything. They do a lot, and they work their asses off in those movies. But still, it's just like who's directing it doesn't make part of the experience, and for me, that's important. That's why I always been trying to, avoid those, and that's the emotional part. It's not a real decision. It's just when I go, my gut, I cannot do it. Like, even if I try to convince myself and go like, oh, that's a good job, like, just go do it. Yeah. Then just emotionally, I cannot spend a second thinking that's the thing I'm gonna do. I might do it someday, once I have more movies, and also because I think in order to succeed and make good movies on that world, I think you need some body of work and some gravitas in the room when you're gonna discuss with the whole studio what you're gonna do. And I don't think I'm there yet. I think I have to make more movies to prove, I don't know, dude. Honestly, it's just there's no master plan. It's all emotional. It's just like, that's what I want to do.
Oh, that's great.
So things, I'm not too crazy about it. And I really want to be able to control my ideas. And that's why usually I like more the scripts that I write, not because they're better, it's just because I wrote them. And obviously all the themes and ideas that are there are exactly the things that I like because that's why I wrote them. And when I read someone else's script, it's not exactly my point of view or it's not exactly my sensitivity. So I end up usually saying no, or just if I'm going to put a lot of work in that script, I just decide to put a lot of that work on my other script that is at least my own. And again, so far I can afford it, which is the whole key in Hollywood.
You mentioned doing primarily practical effects on Evil Dead, which is both admirable and completely fucking insane. But was there one, like, what was the worst one? The one that you were like, oh my God, I can't believe we decided to do this practical. Like,
the cutting the arm off in the kitchen, you know, when she goes with that bread cutter and cut her arm off because we want to do that practical. I want to see her arm falling. I mean, I want to see her with her real arm there, and she goes for it and start cutting. You know, there's a cut there in the editing, but it's not that you couldn't. If you were standing there, you will see exactly what happened in the movie, and that became. I mean, it's not that I would decide not to do it. If I do it again, I will do it exactly like I did it. But it was just 2 shots, one entire day of shooting just to do that. Because the reset is a sucker, right? You have to the whole kitchen is covered in blood. There's one makeup piece. I mean, it's very hard to explain in a podcast, but basically we had a person behind the counter, another girl with her arm stretched out. So this arm belonged to someone else that is right there. This is the prosthetic that is just connecting the one actress with the other actress is the forearm. And so this is what she's cutting. It has a pipe and blood is coming out. So it was really kind of, it was a prosthetic that was rigged with blood inside. So all the actress had to do was just cut it, and that's it. And she couldn't really bring herself to do it because her real arm was behind her and fell asleep, so she couldn't feel it. So her brain was convinced that this hand that is a real hand that is moving in front of her is her arm. So and this thing is it's a real knife that will cut you because you need to cut through the prosthetic. So she was about to do it many times. So I was like, I'm sorry, my brain is just like stopping me from doing it. It's just survival mode. So it took forever. And then when she did it, she kind of hesitates. The thing didn't work. I had to fix it. But then eventually, I think on the second shot, it worked. And it was fantastic. It was just to see it on the moment, it was shocking. So I was hoping that, hopefully that translates into the movie. Yeah. But we all so savvy with film, even the main audience are so used to the fact that if they see someone holding a hand and someone's going to cut it, they know there's going to be a cut right before the cut. There's going to be a cut to your eyes, and then you're going to see a close-up of the hand, and that gives them comfort that they know that's when they cut to the prosthetic. Even if they don't go through all that, their brain goes somehow through that. Like they know, okay, it's been a cut there. That's not the person anymore. So because rarely you see someone, I don't know, getting shot in the face with not a cut before or some editing slick thing there. So it's good if you can really do it in a very explicit way and raw and show something that has a real effect, it just goes a long way. So that was definitely the one that took forever, but it worked. At the end of that day was fantastic. Everybody was gone. I was just looking at the kitchen and I walked into it just to see the mess. And I looked to my left and the actress is still there. Everybody's gone, right? It's the end of the day, and she's like still there with her arm hanging, and she's just shaking and all traumatized by spending 12 hours sitting on the floor, not able to move. And she was like, and I'm like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna go home now." And it was like, I think everybody's gone. It was just fantastic, just to see that it did that and in a person, and she's fine, right? Nothing happened to her. She was just in that place mentally, and that's what you want as a director, to just be able to make your actors go through something that they don't have to fake the emotions. That what happened is so shocking even for them that it translates to the movie, right?
Yeah. You mentioned before that with the testing process that the final movie that goes out is your director's cut. Like if it works for the audience, that's the version of the movie that you wanted to put out. But because we're the horror fans that we are, I'll never forget seeing a still in a Fangoria magazine from Evil Dead 2 of like half of Evil Ed's head missing. And then you go see the movie and you're like, oh my God, where's that shot? I've imagined it. I saw it in the magazine and it's not there. Obviously there's similar things with Your Evil Dead because there's stuff from the trailers that didn't make it in the movie. Yep. There were rumors of a director's cut or an extended or whatever. So I just kind of wanted to get your side of the story. Is there a longer version of the movie or is the one that came out the one you prefer?
There is, but it's not director's cut. It's just usually what I do, like most directors do. You do a first cut. Right, and you look at it, and it's too long. Usually, the first one. So I made the decision. Like I don't know why most directors they have their first cut that they actually present to the producers are very long. That's why I heard all the time they're very long and kind of self-indulgent. And I don't do that. I really cut it to the bone to make sure that that's the sharpest piece of storytelling that I can tell. I don't want the producer to tell me like that scene doesn't work. Get out of there. And so I really try to take it to a very effective machine of storytelling if I can. And so on Evil Dead, I think we had a scene where David was going to the shed and chopping his girlfriend into pieces to fulfill the prophecy. And there was a couple of things that were actually in the trailer, but because the trailers, usually when you have that long cut, that's why you send to marketing to start working on the cuts and the trailers and all that. So while they're doing trailers, I still cut in the movie. Mm-hmm. So my cut is the one that I put out. I just, but then there was a rumor that, it wasn't a rumor. It's just like you said, they saw the trailer. It was like, wait a second, there's more stuff. What there was is an extended version, which doesn't mean it's a director's cut, right? There's a difference. Director's cut is just that vision that wasn't able to be out there. The extended version is just that longer version of the movie that you had at the beginning that I didn't think was the best version of the film. And that movie, it was just a funny story. It's just like it got licked. It was just an error, and Sony shipped it the wrong version to the UK. So one day suddenly it's airing in the UK the extended version. I'm seeing all this scene, and I'm like, what is happening? Because I thought they were just going to do a new edition at some point, and now maybe they should do it anyways. But at that point, it was just one of those weird things that I don't think they ever happened. Like UK end up airing an extended version. I was like reading that tweet and looking at it, and I was like, that's actually the extended version. Yeah. But that's not a director's cut. The director's cut is one you've seen.
And I mean, are you okay if that extended cut does come out at some point?
Oh yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's just longer and just drags a little bit more in some points, and it has some stuff that maybe not awesome because, I mean, if it wasn't on my cut, there's a reason for it. It's just like when you watch deleted scenes, there's a reason why they're deleted usually. Yeah. But sometimes it's not that the scene doesn't work. It's just that on the context of the movie, it just drags the pace, or you don't want that at that point, which is emotional. It doesn't track what you wanted. But that's the extended version that I wish it was more publicly available. But I kind of like the fact that it's kind of mysterious and it's kind of out there, and I don't know. I'm sure you can download it. If
somebody in the UK tape it.
Well, that all ties back to the beginning of our conversation, which is this like kind of forbidden fruit and rare cuts and all that other stuff that we pursued when we were kids on VHS. And like that's the stuff that I try to track down. And when at the advent of the internet age, was talk on message boards and be like, "Do you have this cut?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, I got that Hellraiser 4 special edition," even though it's still total crap. So we're a few weeks. Yeah, exactly. So we're a few weeks.
I gotta put some stuff out. Like I've been going through my dailies recently, to my Evil Dead dailies, and I found a lot of crazy shots and stuff that we're doing. We actually did an alternative ending. There was just a reproduction of that final shot on Evil Dead 1, where the camera runs through the house and just comes out, and Bruce Campbell turns around and screams. And we did the same thing with Jane Levy. It was going to be one of the endings, and I figured the other day I'm just going to do a GIF with that. Just people go crazy about like, where is that from? Where is that from?
Well, the last thing about Evil Dead before we cut through, just because now in retrospect it's fun, because now obviously there's the Ash vs. Evil Dead TV series and they've continued that version of it. But I remember as soon as your movie came out, there was like all these rumblings from insiders.
You guys
on the
were the
lens.
worst with the PR. Really, like you and Bruce and Sam were like, we were
they're
literally at
gonna do
WinterCon thinking we were getting punked by you guys. Like we sat up there. Bruce is like, we're gonna make a bunch of these, and you're like, yeah, maybe we'll do 2, maybe we'll do 3. And Sam's like, I love all of it. And we're like, you know what? They're punking us.
We're just being honest.
I'm just
like having a conversation.
Well, I heard that the intention was to combine franchises at some point. But I mean, how far did you get in a sequel? Because obviously it was successful, so I can imagine that conversation happened. But I also feel like the Ash vs. Evil Dead or Army of Darkness 2, whatever was inevitable. I felt like Sam and Bruce was eventually going to do that. So how far did you get on a sequel?
I mean,
and was there really talk of
There
combined?
was, yeah, there definitely was, and but it is kind of connected to what you just said. You said because the first one was successful, it was kind of obvious that you got together, but that's thank God, and that's actually a good thing for the fans. It's like not Bruce, Sam, Rob Tapper, or me thinks that way. You don't make a movie because you can. You make a movie if you have a good story to tell. And obviously, the market will push you, and the studio was pushing. Like, we'll make it. We'll put it out there. Like 2 years later, and it's gonna be an audience. There's some like easy math usually when you have success, certain numbers that you know how much money you can make. But that's not a reason to make a movie, because that's how shitty movies get made every day, right? When you make them for the wrong reasons. And for us, really, the reason was like, do we have a good story? Do we have something that's left to be told on this particular story? And though at first we were like, well, let's find out. Then we would sit down with Rodo. We were like, well, we can do this, we can do that. And one of the things we want to do was like, you know what would be exciting? Let's get Mia to connect with Ash, right? Let's show that this is in the same world. And that's why the cameos at the end of the movie, kind of motivation it was something afterthought that we had while we were making it, and thought like that will open the door for that movie. And that was really what I wanted to do at some point. But then very quickly, the whole idea of doing the show of Ash versus Evil Dead came about, and we all thought like, well, maybe it's better to just bring Ash back to the world as a character for the new generations and show him to the world why he's so cool. And maybe after that, that's the time to do that, Mia and Bruce getting together again. And that was basically what happened back then. It was just like, let's just give room for the show, and that's what we should do now. And then went away to do that, and it's been super successful. And I'm so proud of those guys doing that and pulling that off. And I'm really good friends with Bruce, and it's just like seeing him back there in the screen, like kicking ass. It's just a blessing. And so maybe now could be a moment to say, well, depending on where the show goes with that story, to say like maybe we connect the feature world with the TV world, and we tell that story. But it has to be something that is great. If you're motivated by the fact that you can't do it, it's just like it's gotta work with, then usually it's when you end up doing something that is not pure. It's just
it's organic storytelling versus fan servicing.
Exactly. Well, but it's not even that, because fan servicing for me, it is storytelling. You got to give them something great. Otherwise, you're just abusing them. Or just like you're just taking their money for exchange of something that is not great. And I'm sure it sounds like everybody wants it. It's just like this whole Suicide Squad thing. Like they know it's bad, and they go like, I don't care. I want to see it anyway. I'm actually might go to see it tonight. So I heard it's terrible, but who cares? Once you're fixated with something, you want it anyways, right? So
the tones are so different, though. I can't imagine those two worlds. Like the TV show is so kind of goofy and fun, and
that's the challenge.
That
is interesting. That's when there's perhaps a door for something new.
Yeah.
If you don't know what it is, that's when it might be great. Yeah. When you know exactly how it's going to be, it's like, so what's the point?
Just teased a door. Maybe
maybe he's
still door. I'm running with it.
And both were shot in New Zealand, right?
We can do parallel universe like Stranger Things.
That's right.
There we go.
That could be good.
Because you shot the feature in New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
And then the show, is that just because Tappert has been set up?
Yeah,
there?
he did everything there, and he has all his crew there from the Xena times. Yeah. Everything was down in New Zealand. So
were you on a location or a studio?
Yeah. No location. We're in the real woods.
Did you actually build?
Again, one of those things that everybody was like, what are you doing? We can reproduce exactly this patch of woods inside a soundstage. Yeah. No problem. It was like, what's the fun on that? Like, you want to be... I'm from that generation that, you've seen Heart of Darkness, and you want to go through the hell of that, and like going mad in a wood, like screaming from a megaphone from the top of a tree. That's the fun of making movies, and that's the way I like it, right? Like, and I was telling Rob Tapper, I was like, I'll get to that point where I go like, you know what, this just be on the stage, right? But now at least I still like the challenge of being on location and all that, things that it brings with it. And I think they look more real, the movies, when you do that, right?
Did you construct the cabin, or is that like a pre-existing?
No, we built it. Yeah, we built it from the ground up. We just found a spot in the woods, and we said like, that's where we're going to build our cabin, and we built it.
Is it still
there? And we had another
is
one
it a
that was
Mecca
on the
for
soundstage,
fans?
but for the interiors.
Is it still there?
No, I think they took it down. They had to take it down because it was kind of a sacred ground for the Maori, so it was kind of we had to build it and just take it down.
Delicately.
There's a horror movie right there.
Do you watch trailers? I'm just curious, because we're talking about fan service, we're talking about spoilers, and I know for me, I try to avoid them.
He's the only guy I know that didn't watch any of the Evil Dead trailers before going to see
Not
it.
a
We're like,
single
you have to
one.
see the trailer. It looks
And
so
he
good.
like
Nope.
avoids them. Like if you're
Yeah,
watching
I'm
the
starting
trailer,
to do
he'll
that
avoid
same
it.
thing. I started to feeling on that, like, and really, if I haven't made my mind, like, I'm gonna watch a movie, like Rogue One, I haven't seen nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't. Yeah, I gotta see the movie. There's no way around that. So why would I, just spoil myself? We watch. I'd rather be surprised.
And with horror films, a pro tip: close your eyes during the witch trailer, and it's really fucking scary. Like, I sat through so many movies where the trailer started, and I just closed my eyes, and you hear the screaming
Sure
and
it
goat,
is.
and you're like, and then everyone's talking about Black Phillip, and you have no idea what they're talking about, and it's a great feeling. But the reason I ask is a student I teach film, and a student of mine forced me to watch the Don't Breathe trailer because he's like, it's so good, you have to just watch the trailer. And I just seen Green Room and I loved it, and I made them see it. So I sat down, I watched the trailer, and I thought I was instantly sold, wanted to see it. But just as Ryan walked into the room, all I said is, I don't want to know anything. But is there something that's not in the trailer still yet to come or is it just tense for the whole movie? And that's all I wanted to, that's the only thing I want answered because I'm going anyway. You've already got my money, but you still want to win me over.
Well, there's, you've seen the film, and there's, I think it's very hard to judge. Like, if you've seen the film and then you watch the trailer, usually you get a feeling like, oh my God, they're showing everything because you know what the movie is. But I tell you, there's so many things that you don't have in any of the trailers that we put out.
Cool.
Because
Another level to go.
I'm in every meeting when we like talk about trailers, and I approve every trailer that comes out. So I really make sure that there's so many things in the film that we're not spoiling. And there's a new Red Band trailer that came out today. by the way.
Yeah,
really
he
good.
just told us.
And that one has so many images and stuff, but it's just so weird and strange that it's very hard for your brain to put together what's going on. It just promises you that a lot of things are going to go down. But again, you've seen the film, so you know what I'm talking about.
nuts.
It's just a story. It takes so many twists and turns that there's no way you can predict what's going to happen. Look, there's something, when we cut in these trailers and we're showing them, people sometimes bitch about them, like, oh, you spoil. Oh, now I've seen the whole movie. What am I going to see it now? And people say that. I'm like, dude, I've never watched a film that I walked out and goes like, oh, it would have been great if it wasn't because I've seen the trailer. Now I don't like it.
I'd say that for
nothing happened.
Quarantine was my only
Quarantine's
one.
the
but
worst
that was
in
a
the
remake.
history.
But you
Yeah.
didn't like the movie. You wouldn't like it, but you didn't like it because you've seen a
I
trailer.
probably wouldn't have liked the movie anyway, but because I saw the trailer, I was just pissed.
But that was the thing. It's like I remember seeing Quarantine. I remember seeing all these other movies, and even I saw some of the comments on Don't Breathe where they're like, "Oh, they're ruining this part." And it's like, you know what? If you've seen the movie and you've seen the trailer, don't be the first asshole that comes out and goes, "All the shit's in the
Exactly.
trailer," because you know what? There's a lot of people who haven't seen
Exactly.
it and they don't understand that
Yeah.
may or may not be a spoiler. So just keep your mouth shut.
Yeah,
I think a lot of this is more a criticism of modern trailers. Like the way trailers were when we were kids, and the one I always cite is Congo. Every time. Congo is a crap movie, but that
the only thing
trailer
it gets
gets me
referenced
hard.
for.
Like the trailer is just out of focus shots of a monkey running, and you're like, what is it?
What is
I need to see Congo. And then Bruce Campbell pops up and does
So amazing.
Actually-
Sometimes Elric, anytime Congo could be mentioned, I just see that as a win for the day.
It is a
That's
win.
just
it was big in New Zealand.
Yeah, Congo was big.
I remember the trailer for It's Alive being one of the greatest things I'd ever seen as a kid,
the
and it scared the
teaser.
shit out of me because the teaser was literally just a
the
crib,
best bit, yeah.
and it rotated, and then there was a claw sticking out of
But
one
that's
side.
not the trailer. That's a teaser.
But
And a
it
lot of those
worked.
movies had great teasers. That's what we remember. It's not like the trailer for Alien wasn't the egg
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the sound. There was a lot more than that. And actually, that's something I've been doing recently. If think about any movie like I don't know, The Exorcist, go watch the trailer. I had some cool trailers even back then. And you watch it and you go like, they spoiled the whole thing.
Yeah.
They show she's possessed. They show how deep she goes. They even show like Father Carr's flying out the window. Like they show the whole thing. But we feel that way because we've seen the movie and we know what's happened, right? So you feel like, oh my God. But the reality is that if you haven't, it's just promised a lot
Were
of
they
things
maybe
gonna happen
shorter?
and you don't
Like
know.
maybe I'm wondering if they were the actual trailers were shorter length because now they're pretty
No,
long.
'cause
No, they were long, like
They
super
showed,
long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they showed
Super
The
long.
Shining and they showed Rosemary's Baby at the New Bev when we went to go see
trailers.
something. And The Shining is just the gush of blood
Yeah.
coming
Yeah, that
out.
teaser.
And a slow crawl of just
And he's
like,
Kubrick, so he
standing-
can kind of say what he wants. The trailers of that. Too.
But that lasted a bit. It lasted
Yeah,
a bit.
okay.
And The Omen. The Omen was another one that was just like, holy fuck, they just showed every kill.
Well, what about the Friday the 13th one?
Oh, the Friday the
They would go
13th,
through
yeah.
a number each kill.
Yeah.
So you're right, but I think it's also something to do with probably on my end getting older and getting less pleasures from things.
Exactly.
So if I can,
That's true. I
you know,
completely
suddenly I'm
agree.
Larry David. Yeah, it's okay, but I mean
I
it.
completely agree. Yeah.
It's like everything's just a little less pleasurable, and movies are part of that. You know, there's Viagra. There's all these problems. I need some Viagra for movies. Viagra for movies is not watching trailers.
This is your get off my lawn moment.
But I think it's valid.
I completely agree. Like that's what I'm really trying to do, and believe me, it's the trailers you've seen so far is just the tip of the iceberg of what the story is. Like, this is one of those that you never know how deep the rabbit hole goes until you really start getting into the movie. It gets to a point that you think you know, and when you think you know, just push it forward, and you go like, oh, wait, what's going on? And I guess mostly is, tell me if you disagree, but I think mostly is because there's no good guys. Like, even in the trailer, that's clear. Like, and because there's no good guys, there's not a clear moral ending that you know should happen. I mean, when Hollywood gives you a good guy and a bad guy fighting, you know how it's going to end. Like, because morally, you know who should win. So, and Hollywood always give you the morally correct ending usually, most of the times, right? So the trick was to go back to something that I didn't invent it. Hitchcock did that in every fucking movie he did. Nobody was good. They were all like bad people. Like, think about
Janet
Psycho.
Leigh,
Janet Leigh, she's stealing this money
robbery,
from this guy that's gonna buy a house for his daughter.
James
on
Stewart's
his wedding
Jimmy
day.
Stewart's basically a rapist in Vertigo. Like,
He's
crazy,
a psychopath.
dressed
He's
up
a
like this dead person that I
He's
helped kill.
forcing this woman to dress like this woman he used to love and change his hair. He's obsessed with it. Like, he's a douchebag.
I like to think of it as pre-necromantic. It's basically the same.
Totally. They're strangers on a train. Like, everybody's
Yeah, you're right.
bad, right? And what that does morally, you go like, oh shit, who should win here? It's like if I tell you there's two characters fighting at the climax of a movie. One of them is a pedophile that is really in rehab, and the other one is a banker that like rip everybody from their savings, but have a lot of conflict with that. Like, who's gonna win?
Yeah.
You don't know. Like, it really depends of what's worse. You just know, and you kind of understand both of them. You kind of feel that the fact that the pedophile is really someone in the past and he's really trying not to do it ever again. So you kind of empathize with. So you can empathize with anybody, right? Game of Thrones has shown us that. Like, you can empathize with anybody, and the key is to do that and to do it with people that are not like saints. So you get the audience to really create suspense, not just in the scenes, but in the movie, because nobody knows, like, how this is supposed to end. Like, I don't know. I want to know. Please, movie, tell me. Right?
Well, as a storyteller, too, it's about kind of the efficiency with which you're able to make the audience side with that person who might have gone off their moral compass. You bring up Game of Thrones. It took us a while to get on, like, either Cersei's side or anybody's side who's, like, an asshole in that show. But with you, you know, and especially Don't Breathe, I feel like, you know, it's just very efficient and tight, and you know, and you're immediately you can identify, okay, you know what, these people are all off their moral compass, but I like her, you know, or I like him, or whatever. So
he also brought the gray area to Evil Dead by making the lead character somebody who's there for rehab reasons and drug addicts, and all the friends are really worried, and they're interjecting in a way that could be perceived as "fuck you guys, get out of my life," and I think that creates a heroine that you're a little more invested. I think also,
she's because she's not at the beginning. She's not very grateful to everybody. Like, oh, thank God everybody came to do this for me. I mean, she's a real person. And people I met that are on that stage, they're like douchebags to everybody around them. Like, they don't like be patronized by people. They're like, you're a drug addict, you better get clean. So that's her attitude. But then eventually at the end, when she's like shoving that chainsaw down Demon's throat, everybody's cheering for her, even though she was a monster. That scares you. I haven't seen it. But again, like, you know what I mean? Like, it gets on that climax of that movie, everybody's cheering for her. Like, empathy is like the key, and it's really tricky to do. But at the end of the day, I think we're all capable to empathize with everybody, and even with the antagonist on my movie, like whoever that is, you really get there's ways in even to empathize with him, and those otherwise it's not a real character, right?
Well, guys, this has been a great chat.
Yeah.
Don't Breathe comes out August
26th.
26th.
Yeah. And this looks like an audience
2 weeks
picture.
from
Like,
now.
I'm
Yeah.
looking
It's an
forward to
audience
seeing
movie.
it.
I wanna see this one in the
see it with
theater,
a packed
definitely.
house.
do you already know what's? I mean, from what you can say, do you already know what you're lined up to do next, or are you still trying to create that next auteurist?
Yeah, I don't know yet. I mean, we have a few things. One thing, there's a movie we're writing for Warner Brothers that we'll see what happens with that. I mean, I'm excited about that. We'll see what it is. And then there's like a couple of TV shows. actually, that we're working on, that we're creating, and we're excited about that. And hopefully, you'll know more about it soon. But then, I always take my time with these things. It's just I don't like. I mean, there's a saying here in Hollywood, like you should get your next movie before the previous one comes out. That leads to disaster. That's a recipe for bad movies. But a lot of people do it. I mean, because the money rules, and if you what you after is like making a lot of money, yes, you should do that because that's the time you get paid the most. But I cannot do it, dude. It's just like I really have to make movies that I'm proud of, and if I have to, starve to death by waiting for that movie, I'll do it. I couldn't live with myself if I make a movie that I'm not proud of, that ain't good, that I cannot tell. Like, and usually I'm not proud of my movies. Usually I hate them, but it's just at least I know that I make them for the right reasons, and I go like, okay, good. Like I make all the decisions that I know are, goes with my morals, and they weren't because of the money or weren't because as a stepping stone to get whatever thing. Another thing, all the things that you hear all the time in Hollywood, I really make an exercise every morning to not do. I just make the movies that I believe I will die to see in the theater, and nobody else is making them. So I go like, okay, so I have to make that film, and that's really my single and simple motivation to make stories, and so far it has worked, and we'll hopefully I'll be able to keep making them.
Very cool.
Excellent.
Very
Perfect.
cool. Well, Fede, thanks for coming on, man.
Much.
Yeah, really
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Looking
It was
forward to the
just-
movie, man.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care.
It was a lot of fun, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.